That was Newsmash, and it's a complicated world, isn't it, Dominic? How long is the BSA going to be relevant in a world where television isn't the only way people can see moving pictures?
Yeah, I mean, I'd argue that television still is the dominant form of entertainment, especially in households where the iPhone's all sitting in pride of place, the big screen TV is. And interesting, TVs are actually getting bigger, of course, and the home's not smaller, so we're not necessarily seeing them go. But yeah, the BSA has no jurisdiction over internet, so, you know, you've got to think...
Do you think it should?
Certainly, as an organisation, we'd like to see appropriate standards for all media, for all content, and I think really in terms of traditional broadcasters versus newer broadcasters, you've got to create a level playing field.
But I mean, you look at it in Australia, the Australian broadcast regulators all over everything. It actually doesn't seem to work, does it?
Well,
it's hard to regulate.
I think you've got to target regulation appropriately to the medium, and you can't regulate the internet like, for example, you would regulate free-to-air TV. You wouldn't want to because it's a totally different device. But certainly, we'd like to see something appropriate for all devices, for all content. That may be self-regulation for certain platforms, co-regulations we've currently got for others. But we do need to rethink about how we're dealing with content.
What would you do about the internet, Lindsay?
Well, Internal Affairs have got quite a handle on this at the moment, haven't they?
Internal Affairs absolutely only target the very, very worst content, basically child pornography.
That has a criminal element, kiddie porn and all of the rest, and worse. And, I mean, at the moment they've got, right now, as we speak, as they say, we've got Interpol's top cop, an Irish policeman who is here in New Zealand at the moment, looking at something like, I understand, 124 more cases of reported child abuse on the internet that's based here in New Zealand. So I think governments are obviously very conscious of the fact that there has to be internet regulation stepped up.
Well, certainly for illegal-based content. That's obviously
Absolutely.
that gap is
I don't think there's an intelligent thinking person in the country that doesn't agree that we should have some form of regulation against child pornography, against hate speech, against the things that all people find offensive. But when you say you'd like to see regulation on the internet, for what? For my opinion of what's funny, or for my opinion of what's not? Because although you're Catholic and I understand that you believe in your God and that's wonderful, I don't. And so therefore it doesn't offend me that South Park take the mickey out of it any more than it may offend you if South Park take the mickey out of something else that has nothing to do with religion.
Were you offended by those pictures in the Herald on Sunday?
Of the kids?
Of the little girl with
I'm
lipstick
offended by the concept of it. I think dressing 5-year-old and 6-year-old girls up to look like they're 20 or 30 is repulsive. I'm offended by it, but I agree that we should try and...
If the equivalent of that had taken place on TV, would you have thought it was a valid broadcasting standards complaint?
Yes, but I don't think you can really compare child pornography with taking the mickey out of religious icons. If we all believed in the one religious icon, certainly. If we all believed in your God, then fine. You'd go, all right, he exists. But until that point, it's just your belief.
But we're living in a pluralistic society now. It's a very, very diverse society. And, liberal sort of speech, freedom of speech, shouldn't be an incentive to incite offence against those many groups of people who constitute our pluralistic society.
There are people out there that would believe that some things, some parts of the church do are offensive. There are some people that believe that, different elements of everything that goes under, that the people who practice one thing or preach one thing and who sometimes privately practice another thing is offensive to people as well. Everybody has skeletons in their closet in terms of that. Your religion is no different to anybody else's. If we want to take the mickey out of the Pope, the fact that you revere him as a man who has a direct conversation with God, and I think of him as a guy in a funny hat, doesn't mean that I shouldn't be allowed to say that.
It's a question of how you take the mickey out of the Pope.
Why?
There are some very funny Pope jokes, and I think it's true to say that the Catholic Church has a very big body of humour. Father Ted we saw as one such. But it's the way it's done. Is it done to denigrate? Is it done to...
But why should that bother you or your God? Do you think he's really worried about it? Do you think he's up there going, if only it wasn't for South Park, I'd have another 100,000 people commit to me?
I don't think it's not simple.
Why does he need that help? Well, how is it complex?
It's not a question...
I'm still reaching, Oliver, for something that will offend you. Yeah, is there something
I've told
that
you child pornography, hate speech, those sorts of
because that's deeply
of
controversial at the moment in Canada. They're trying to apply hate speech laws, and it's hugely controversial because that's seen as an abrogation of free speech.
I think that is a very tricky road to go down, but I think that if you have something like a public broadcaster, or if you have a broadcasting station like that, and that if you have a show on it that is like I had no problem with the issue that was taken against our station, because we had a guy who didn't do his job, and hate speech was put up on the screen. I think it's offensive. I think it's disgusting, and I think it's I don't want it to be a part of my channel.
The things you believe in, you wouldn't like to see somebody getting up saying something terribly disrespectful and denigrating of your mother, I'm sure. I mean, there are things that we all hold
do terribly
dear.
denigrating things about our Prime Minister. We do terrible denigrating things about the President of America. We do terrible denigrating things about actual living people with feelings who can watch it and be hurt. And yet as soon as we put your God on...
No, but no, not just our God. I mean, no television, no broadcaster is going to get up and make rather crass, show rather crass pictures depicting our head of state or our Prime Minister, who might happen to be a woman, menstruating, and menstrual blood or blood from any other bodily orifice coming and shooting and covering somebody else in the face. I mean, you could draw the line.
They actually might. In a comedy show like South Park, as well.
They would. They've done it with George Bush. They've done it with everybody else.
With South Park, it was a contextual thing. These were images that were crudely animated. I mean, again, let's not forget, everything, all good taste and decency complaints are always dealt with in context. So we're always looking at a range of things. We don't just go, hey, you know, that was good, that was bad. We look at
the ironic thing about that South Park episode and about most things that are taking the piss out of religion is that they're not actually taking the mickey out of the God. They're taking the mickey out of the people that follow him. And then the same people that they're taking the mickey out of get in a complaint. And if you hadn't complained, no one would have watched it. Well, it would have just drifted on. And
we're actually going to have to go to a break now, and we can wrap that up after seeing something I think you'll quite like, Lindsay. Simon Pound finds out who, on earth anyway, is behind the messages from God.